Hi guys, welcome back to exmolex. If you're new here, hi, my name is Lex. I was born and raised in the Mormon Church and I was a member for 25 years before learning more information about my beliefs and making the life-changing decision to leave the Mormon Church. Now I share my story and what I've learned about the church with others. Today I'm going to share some of the weirdest stories found in the Book of Mormon. The LDS Church teaches that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God and the most correct book on the earth. They also believe in the King James Version of the Bible as far as it is translated correctly. From the church's website, the Book of Mormon teaches about God and Jesus Christ. It was written in an ancient language on gold plates by prophets in ancient America. Later, Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon into English through the gift and power of God. Well, here are a few interesting stories from the Book of Mormon. Starting off strong with a story near the beginning of the Book of Mormon. A young man named Nephi, who is the protagonist of the story, decapitates a drunk man named Laban and puts on all of his clothes and armor, apparently without getting blood on anything. Then he goes to Laban's treasury and speaks to one of Laban's servants using Laban's voice. The servant doesn't notice that Nephi is in fact not Laban. He does all of this because an angel told him that it is better for one man to die than for a nation to dwindle in unbelief, which, funnily enough, is what ends up happening at the end of the book. There's also the fact that earlier in the book, 1 Nephi chapter 3 verse 7, it says that God gives no commandments without preparing a way for his children to obey them. But Nephi violates two different commandments, thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal, in order to follow God's commandment to cut off Laban's head and steal his clothes, armor, sword, and the brass plates. You can read more about this story in 1 Nephi chapter 4. I also just have to mention that when Nephi finds Laban passed out drunk on the ground and picks up his sword, he can't help but to mention how fancy the sword is. And I beheld his sword, and I drew it forth from the sheath thereof, and the hilt thereof was of pure gold, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine. And I saw that the blade thereof was made of the most precious steel. Joseph Smith was quite the storyteller, and he was also just an average boy. Man, look at this badass sword. Up next, a missionary named Ammon finds favor with King Lamoni, who offers Ammon one of his daughters, but Ammon refuses. Gay? But he does become a servant in the king's household, helping other servants watch over the king's sheep. While they're watching over the sheep, a bunch of bandits show up and try to steal the king's flock. So Ammon tells the other servants to circle the sheep so that they don't scatter, and Ammon takes on all the bandits by himself. He uses a sling to kill some of them from a distance, but any that get close enough for hand-to-hand combat, he just cuts off their arms. They're coming at him with clubs, but he doesn't get hurt at all. Just chops off their arms. And after they're all dead or armless, he gathers up all the arms and takes them to King Lamoni. The king is so impressed, obviously, and Ammon teaches the king all about the gospel. And the king is so electrified by these teachings that he seemingly drops dead. And all of his family members mourn him for 2 days. They even put him in a sepulcher. And his wife says that some of the household is saying that the king is starting to stink, like death. But she says, notably, quote, "To me, he doth not stink." But Ammon says he's not dead, he's just sleeping. And sure enough, after 2 days, he pops back up good as new and converts. This was my favorite Book of Mormon story as a child. And to be fair, it kind of sounds like a superhero story, like maybe Ammon was an early Avenger. You can read more about this story in Alma chapter 17. Next up, Lehi, who is Nephi's dad, finds a magic compass to guide his family through the desert. In the Book of Mormon, it's described as a round ball of curious workmanship, and it was of fine brass. And within the ball were 2 spindles, and the one pointed the way whither we should go into the wilderness. This compass was called the Liahona. And it worked by faith and diligence. It would also randomly have writing appear on it, apparently from God, for Lehi to read. Sometimes it would say scary stuff, sometimes it would teach about the gospel. If Lehi's party was faithful and following the commandments, the Liahona was like a compass that would guide them through the wilderness and tell them where they should go. But if anybody in their party started complaining or not following the commandments, it would stop working and they wouldn't know where to go. You can read more about this magic compass in 1 Nephi chapter 16. Let's do one more story. Apparently, somewhere in the pre-Columbian Americas, a massive war takes place between millions and millions of people that results in the deaths of 2 million plus men, women, and children. And the two leaders of each of the sides are the last two people left alive, and they fight to the death. And even though they were all using steel swords, there is no evidence of this great battle whatsoever. But that might not even be the weirdest part of the story. Listen to the ending. And it came to pass that when Coriantumr had leaned upon his sword that he rested a little, he smote off the head of Shiz. And it came to pass that after he had smitten off the head of Shiz, that Shiz raised up on his hands and fell, and after that he had struggled for breath, he died. I don't know about you, but I have never heard of a headless corpse doing a push-up and then struggling for breath. It almost sounds like the beginning of a zombie movie. You can read more about this story in Ether chapter 15. So in conclusion, the Book of Mormon may be weird, but there are some parts of it that are at least entertaining-ish. Which of these weird stories was your favorite? What are some weird stories from the Book of Mormon that I didn't mention? Maybe I'll do a part 2? Let me know in the comments. Big thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. You guys are the best, and extra special thank you to Amy and Doug Davis for supporting at the Demon tier on my Patreon. If you guys would like to support the channel and the work that I do here, there are links to do so in the description, as well as links to all my other social media if you want to see more content. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!